Welcome to the international premiere of the new film by Scott Burns, The Report. My name is Cameron Bailey. I'm the co-head of TIFF and the artistic director here. I want to thank you all for coming out to a remarkable film. To begin, we want to acknowledge where we are today. This is something we do just to kind of get ourselves a sense of the place we're in. We're on the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Huron-Wendat, and the Anishinaabe First Nations, and the treaty territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. They have been on this land and looking after this land for literally thousands of years, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to share this land and to be in this community. We have an award at our festival. It's called the Grolsch People's Choice Award, and it's voted on by you, and we want to make sure that you remember to vote for your favorite films. You can do that by going online to tiff.net/vote. Big thanks to Amazon Studios for providing us with this film. They've been great partners of ours, and we're very glad to have The Report here, making its first screening outside of its home country. And also great to have Scott Burns back. Many people, when he first came here, would not have known his work. He came with his directorial debut, a film called PU, or Plutonium-239, in 2006, premiered at this festival, actually. He's, of course, since gone on to do so much work as a screenwriter and as a director that I think many people are familiar with. His credits as a screenwriter include The Bourne Ultimatum, The Informant, Contagion, and Side Effects. The Informant played here, of course, as well. And in all of his work, whether he's writing and directing or writing, all of his work shows a rigorous intelligence and a pursuit of the truth that I think we need, perhaps now more than ever. And when you see this film, you'll know what I'm talking about. And he's put together a terrific cast for this film, for a very powerful story and a very timely story, including legend Annette Bening, who is terrific in the film, and the remarkable Adam Driver. Scott has come to introduce the film to you, so please join me in welcoming the director of The Report, Scott Burns.
Hi, thank you, and thank you for coming. And I want to thank the Toronto Film Festival for having us. This is, I think, my third or fourth time here, and I could not be happier to be back with this film. So thank you, Toronto, for having us. And I also want to thank Amazon for getting us here. I am particularly excited to have this film play internationally, because even though the story you're about to see takes place largely in Washington, D.C., it definitely has international implications. When the United States went down the road it did with the coercive techniques it employed, it put all of our allies in a terrible position, including Canada. And so I'm glad to have an opportunity to share this with you. So as you said, I think this is a time when all of us have to make choices. So first of all, thank you all for coming and choosing to spend a couple of hours with this. And I also want to take this opportunity to thank all of my collaborators who chose to throw in with me. A lot of them are in amongst you. I'm going to try and just rip through their names really quickly. Sarah Miller, if you'll stand. Natalie Ferry, Vincent Landay. Toronto's own Eddie Moretti. From our camera department, Johan Eight. Our incredible composer, David Wingo. Lucas Dixon. I also want to bring out a bunch of people who have made it possible for me to be here. One of our producers, Carrie Orant. Jennifer Fox. Steven Soderbergh. And I'd like to bring out our cast members who are here. Please welcome John Hamm. Annette Bening. And Adam Driver. I think we're going to have a Q&A after the movie, and we're going to have a really special guest, so I hope you guys have the time to stick around and meet that person as well.
Thank you. Thanks very much. I'd like to bring out my fellow producer, Jennifer Fox. John Hamm. Annette Bening. Adam Driver. I'd also like to bring out former United States Senate staffer Daniel Jones. Thank you.
Before opening up the Q&A to the audience, Scott, maybe we can begin with you. This is a film that is so rich in detail, heavily researched. It's quite a challenge, I think, to turn that into a, momentous narrative film. Could you maybe talk about the process and that challenge, and maybe also Dan could talk about his involvement?
Sure. I became aware of what, the United States government and the CIA did through an article that I read in Vanity Fair, and I think because both my parents are psychologists, we can talk about that another time. I was horrified because I was brought up to believe that psychologists want to help people. And when I saw the notion that those things could be weaponized, I began to do research, and around that time, or a little bit thereafter, the report that Dan did was released, and I was able, through Senator Feinstein's office, to get a hold of him, and we began a dialogue about the program, and not only what was in the program, but what became equally kind of amazing and intriguing to me was what Dan had to do to get the truth out.
Dan, I don't know if you want to add anything about what it was like to be involved with the project and how it feels to have this story told in a movie.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for coming out today and being here tonight. Well, part of my job after the report was released was to talk to investigators and authors and folks in the creative community like Scott, and he quickly set himself apart by calling and then calling again, and then calling again, and then calling again, but also by the questions he asked, right? He was asking about footnotes and really detailed information about the text in a way really that no one else was. And eventually he said, hey, I want to do a project on this, but it's got to be 100% accurate. So my role in this was really answering phone calls from Scott when he needed me. And I think he did a really fantastic job. So thank you, Scott.
Next, for each of the cast members, could you talk about what attracted you to the project as a whole, but also specifically playing the characters? Annette, can we begin with
There's
you?
no door. There's no door.
There is no exit.
Scott Soderbergh gave it to me, and I knew of Scott and Soderbergh from The Informant, which is a movie I love, so I met with Scott. And then it was a topic that I had a layman's understanding of at the time, and I remember that it happened, but I didn't know certainly about black sites or the detail, here at waterboarding, but I didn't know specifically of walling or the temperature in which prisoners were staying or any details. And I remember asking Scott what was, is it, I just assumed it was my own ignorance, but kind of hearing how much there was an organized kind of PR push when the report came out. In the opposition, there really wasn't a talking head. Senator Feinstein wasn't speaking about it. Dan couldn't as a Senate staffer, but there was plenty of people who were willing to talk against it, be a visual cue. In the print media got a lot of coverage, but there wasn't really a thing that people could look at that was kind of telling the truth. So this seemed like an interesting opportunity. And how he described the character was something that was someone who gets the instructions for something to build, and it turns out that he's building his own gallows. And I thought that was really interesting. And the more I got to know the real Dan Jones and his commitment, and his decorum as a Senate staffer, that it's not really his job to find the truth and go bang on a desk and give his opinion about what it is, that he has to present fact. That was undisputed, and how Scott condensed all of that into a text that was also undisputed. There isn't a line that can't be backed up by a footnote, or all of those things. The actors involved, it all seemed like a no-brainer.
So Scott sent me the script. I thought it was excellent and carefully thought out, well written. So I thought it was that I was just very lucky to be asked to do it.
I got the part the way I get most of my parts, in that Russell Crowe fell out. Wasn't available. His schedule shifted. And, no, I much like Adam and Annette, I read the script and was by turns appalled and transfixed by what was in it, but also by the quality of the writing therein. And to have a 7,000-page document that's been distilled down to a 500-page summary that's now trying to be distilled into a 130-page screenplay is a feat of magic. So that's kind of why I think we all wanted to do this. And there he goes.
I imagine there are questions in the audience. Please raise your hand. We'll start in the front row.
Hi, I'm Victoria. I just wanted to say you guys did an excellent job on this film. This was really remarkable. And Dan, you're just a hero. Thanks so much for doing this. The film is that there's a lot of ideas that the USA is kind of held to a higher standard, kind of in this idea that we have a better system, we don't like go and blow up buildings or anything, but here we see that it gets to this point where we degrade other people in this extent where they actually didn't care that they were going to go and torture anyone. They were just going to go and do it. So, especially in this day and age where things are very decisive now, where we're going in this very, it's hard to really have hope in here, but how do you feel how do you think the movie will be able to persuade this idea of being able to still be a patriot or even to still be American while still being able to perpetually criticize and to help improve whatever is going on or whatever may even be going behind the scenes? There is a chance that this may happen again.
So, to condense that as much as I can, The question is, it's about the maybe arrogance of the American system in view of their own supposedly high ethical standards systemically, and the way the film kind of sheds light on that and how it may have impact on America's or viewers' perception of the country's hypocrisy.
Well, as a kid growing up in northern Minnesota singing the Canadian national anthem at hockey camp, I may not be the best person to answer this. I think that, that patriotism requires people to stand up and criticize when their government and their country isn't being what they were led to believe it was. And you're exactly right. And so, you know, I hope that people, when they see this film, feel patriotic and are reminded of something. You know, there's a phrase that I'm always very uncomfortable with, which is this phrase, American exceptionalism. And I don't feel that's something me as an American gets to declare. I think that's something that the rest of the world gets to decide about us by the way we live and the way we treat each other.
I just want to add to it, there's a moment in the film that I love in which Dennis McDonough, played by John, says, in how many countries could a report like this even be written? And then, of course, Dianne Feinstein says, I don't want to be the country that just writes the report. I want to be the one to release it. And I think there's hope for a system that we have that can work. And it's hard to feel that way right now, but it's there. The structure's there for it.
In the back corner, yeah.
So I'd like to ask, thanks for the film and performances. Several times we see Edward Snowden read into the script, and you could talk about the creative decision or the political message, why you decided to bring that element in.
So the question is about how Snowden is brought into the script and the debate over whether he himself was patriotic.
I think that, well, first of all, during the time when this whole drama was playing out, Edward Snowden was very much in the news, and so it was part of Dan's experience to know that that person existed. I think, I mean, what I was trying to do in the script was get across the idea that Dan Jones made choices to try and force the system to work. And that's what I wanted to really draw a difference between.
Yes, go ahead.
My question is that you have these enormous pressures upon you, these forces that you have no control over. How did you maintain your sanity?
The question is for Dan. With all the pressure that you faced for such a sustained period of time, how did you retain your sanity?
Well, I guess it's important to remind everyone that I was a staffer in the Senate, and it was the senators themselves, the elected officials, who really had the most pressure on them, and eventually the moral courage and knew that they were in the right and that they really needed to get this out, and it was their decision and not mine. And I think we should all be very thankful for their actions.
Yes, go ahead. So the question is about considering the dense material of the script. How did the actors prepare for their roles?
There's an amazing show that I watched called Schoolhouse Rock. It teaches you like how a bill becomes a law, checks and balances, verbs, their action words. It's all you need to know. And then you just say what they write down in front of you, preferably in English, and then try to be in a scene with these two, and then it works really great.
Senator Feinstein, I'm from California, so she's my senator, and I've been aware of her a long time because when she became mayor, I was a student in San Francisco. So I was able to do research on her, the script, and Dan was around all the time, so he's the perfect person to ask about just making sure that we were getting things right. I was privileged to know Senator McCain, and today I was watching the movie, and I have to admit, I really got choked up when John McCain was speaking, especially in view of the way that our present president speaks about John McCain. Don't get me wrong, I disagreed with Senator McCain plenty, but we were dear friends, and he is a true hero. And there were other Republicans who also supported this. So there were a lot of heroes here. There are a lot of people in the CIA, and as you saw in the film, others, who refused to participate in the torture program. We don't know those people because it was a secret program, so Dan knows who they are, but because he knows all the secrets. But those people are out there, and they're also heroes. It makes me think about the present and how many people, if there are any, I suspect there are, that are currently working in this administration in our country, who are being asked to do things that they don't agree with or they find ethically compromising. And what a tough position that some of those people are in. There's a cost to refusing to cooperate. And a lot of people paid that price in this story, and I suspect that's happening as we speak. Oh, take another one.
Take two.
It was kind of twofold. You try to read the report, and then you have Dan as a resource. Even as we were shooting, he was on set a lot, which was just helpful, because just making even just the set more authentic, as opposed to my, TV movie idea of what a blackboard should look like in a windowless room. And Scott, same. They were a resource for the technical stuff, but then. Then you kind of know, you have to know what you're saying, obviously, and make sure that, well, that's it, you know what you're saying. But you can't really just do that, because then it turns into a book report or a documentary. So I think about, those are the facts, but they're almost immaterial in a way in playing the scenes. The big picture of what the movie is about, I leave to Scott, and I think we talked a lot about the theme of obsession. That was interesting. Or someone who not only is kind of challenging his own moral compass, but how he, the faith that he's lost in an institution that he grew to trust, and what is not only his moral identity, but the moral identity of the country, or is that even his job? And then take all that and bottle it up, because it's not your job. You're just a Senate staffer. There's a chain of command that you have to follow. So those are the things I was thinking about less as we started shooting, the kind of bigger ideas of what it's about. You research at the beginning, but then I kind of try to put it away.
Unfortunately, that is all the time we have. Thank you so much for being with us in Toronto. Don't forget to vote for the People's Choice Award at tiff.net/vote, and enjoy the rest of the festival.